So finally, we're going to be thinking about current events and how to use current events as super-curricular activity. If you've not already looked at our study skills session and our intro to super-curricular session, I would recommend that you do that before watching this video. If you already have, then let's get cracking. How can you use current events as inspiration for your super-curricular activity? Well, firstly, it's really important to engage critically with current events, both to educate yourself and to think about the wider contextual implications to your academic research. So for some subjects, current events might be really relevant to your field, so scientific discoveries, law cases, stuff like that. But often major current events will have a lot of implications for all areas of academia, even if that's just thinking about how we think about a subject. And I'll go on to that a little bit more detail later. We're going to spend some time thinking about events that are currently in the news and how we can use it as a basis for super-curricular exploration. Two things to say before I go on. Firstly, this is being recorded on the 22nd of April. So the events that are being discussed are current for the time that we're recording this video. They might be a bit out of date by the time that you watch it. Secondly, just a content warning. Obviously, do feel free to tune out at any point if any of the discussion is distressing, as thinking about things that are current events sometimes can be. Always do make sure that you're kind of protecting yourself when you're doing this kind of super-curricular exploration. So how can you link current events to your subject? What I've done here is just pop up a few things that are currently in the news at the moment. So some of those are on a more general topic level. Some of these are deliberate headlines that have been pulled off different websites. Hopefully you can see that some things are always going to have really direct links to a subject. So for instance, 23rd of April is Shakespeare's birthday and death day. Obviously you will find a lot of content about Shakespeare around that time. So if you're interested in English, drama, history, that will be really, really helpful for you. And it's worth kind of keeping track of some of these dates, like important authors' birthdays or important historical figures' birthdays, and going on a hunt for resources around that time, because a lot of people will be signposting a lot of exciting resources there. Things like the NASA rover, obviously, again, really important implications for physics. Anything that you are studying about that's to do with space exploration or anything to do with space, it's going to have an impact on it. So it's really useful to keep yourself sort of in the loop with something like that. But beyond this, there are obviously a lot of things here which would have an impact on lots of different subjects. And I would challenge yourself to kind of pause this video at this point and to try and come up with a few things how you would like link this to your subject. So for instance, the Black Lives Matter movement, obviously really, really important to stay educated about things like this. And I think that in a lot of areas of academia, this has led people to question sort of the people that they're studying, the academics that they're studying. And in a lot of cases, I think people have discovered that a lot of what they've learned about, or people that they've learned about, have been overwhelmingly from white backgrounds. So for things like English, history, again, thinking about maybe important figures in the past who might have been overlooked. I think you will also, around things like Black History Month, you'll get a lot of people posting articles about sort of overlooked figures. And I will be showing you some examples of how you might use that as inspiration for your research in a moment. Another thing which is quite important is that it is Earth Day at the moment. So thinking about maybe sustainability in the climate crisis, that has a lot of different implications for a variety of different subjects. And I'm going to show you some of those right now. So what is quite useful is to firstly think about an event that's in the news and then think about that on a subject level. So how can I link that to my subject? And it might not always be obvious. Here I kind of thought, well, there's obviously a lot of important links for geography, for instance, and thinking about sustainability, and also for sciences, and like biology in particular. It can be sort of really important to think about stuff like sustainability. So then I kind of tried to challenge myself to come up with some different subjects that you wouldn't immediately think, oh, Earth Day is linked to these. So for computer science, I thought about algorithms for climate change, economics, the impact of sustainability on businesses, and for history of art, the use of nature in artwork. What's then important is to take this to a resource level. And this is where the Googling comes in. So just searching for something like algorithms for climate change can bring you to an article, which I found in Nature magazine, which was actually really interesting in thinking about machine learning and predicting like patterns of long-term climate change. That could be something that you then find really interesting, that you then explore more about in that subject. Or it might just be that you come away more informed about the link between this and your subject than you did earlier. Similarly, there was a National Geographic article that popped up as soon as I searched for impact of sustainability on business, which I found really interesting. The link between history of art and Earth Day, I actually found through Twitter. As I said, something that you will find is that anytime there is a kind of event like this, especially an international day, you will get a lot of different people and different businesses posting about the link between what they do and the day that it is. So the Van Gogh Museum posted on Twitter that they'd put together a sort of interactive exhibit, interactive page about the use of nature in artworks, specifically to celebrate Earth Day, which is, it's a really interesting page and really fascinating to think about that sort of link. Obviously, Earth Day is much more modern than Van Gogh, so you wouldn't immediately think about that as a link, but it can be really useful. So I would really recommend that following like businesses or museums or sort of anything that is linked to your subject on Twitter is a really, really good way of being signposted to articles like this or different resources like this without you having to go and hunt for them. I put a tweet up by the Pope as well, just because I found it really interesting that the Pope had tweeted about it. I wouldn't have expected it. I think for anyone maybe studying theology or history or something like that, it could be interesting just to think about what are these links. Yeah, there are obviously the links to the articles and resources that I've referenced at the bottom there. Do feel free to check those out if you would like to. I've popped this back up here. Again, I would recommend that you pause this and have a think about the different things that you can link to your subject. We had a really, really great discussion when we ran the session live, and I think that it can be a really fun and interesting exercise to do to try and link these things to your subject. Finally, we're going to discuss how to integrate super-curricular activities into your personal statement. So quite a useful sort of template for this is just to say that this thing made me think a lot about the impact of this on my subject. This resource sparked my interest in this broader topic, and I did further research by looking into the topic in like a certain resource. And then what's really, really important is to discuss these resources critically. Some of you may have heard that at Cambridge with our interviews, they're kind of meant to mimic sort of mini supervisions, those kind of small group teaching that we have at Cambridge. If the interviews are meant to mimic supervisions, then it can be quite interesting to think of the personal statement like a mini essay, giving you that space to present the way that you think about your subject. And it will definitely grab the attention of whoever is looking at your application if you're there presenting yourself as an independent thinker, an independent learner, and actually demonstrating your passion for the subject by engaging with your subject, rather than just sort of stating, I've read this pile of books. So hopefully you can see how kind of you can extend your own knowledge and help yourself in understanding your subject, but also really help yourself when it comes to your university application. Just to give you some examples of this in action, I said I would come back to this. Here is a history of art personal statement, thinking about the way that the Black Lives Matter movement impacted their thinking about art history and sort of how much Black history of art they've engaged with. Again, this kind of shows how you might go from one resource to another and link all of these things together. From a sciences perspective, here is another version of that. Again, you might notice that both of these things talk about social media as a way that they've first engaged with the subject. And what they've then done is go on to find a specific resource that they can explore in their personal statement, which is more in depth than the Twitter or the Instagram. So finally, some top tips based on all of these sessions that I've just run. Vary your studying and vary your supercurricular exploration. Use different types of resources, consider what's a low energy exercise and what's a high energy exercise, and make sure you're kind of looking after yourself with that. Enjoy yourself. This whole thing is meant to be fun. It's meant to be great to explore your subject. And it's also supposed to give you a taste of what it's like to explore your subject independently when you're at university. If you're not enjoying yourself, I would question that. I would think about, okay, is it this particular resource, or is it this particular topic, or is it this subject in general? Is there something that I'm more interested in? It can be really helpful as well for you to just, you know, think about what you are actually interested in, because it's much easier to change your mind about what you enjoy studying at this stage than it is when you started at uni. And finally, track your engagement. It's all very well and good doing all these supercurricular activities, but make sure that you're making detailed notes on what you did, what your thoughts were, and whether it inspired any other research. Because then when it comes to writing your personal statements in summer, you will already have all of that information readily available to you. And it will be so much more helpful than, you know, trying to rack your brains thinking, what did I do last April? I hope that's been really helpful for you. If you do have any questions, feel free to email me at accessofficer@joh.cam.ac.uk, or follow us on Twitter and ask any questions there as well. So thank you so much for tuning in. Bye.